All right, so we're going to keep going on our journey, and now we're moving on to the musculoskeletal system. So your muscles and your skeleton. Don't worry, you're not going to have to memorize all the bones. We're just going to talk about the big parts. This isn't A&P. We are just focusing on the big parts of the system and what they do. So be glad about that. So what is the musculoskeletal system? Well, the muscle system and the skeletal system actually work together, and they carry out the commands of the nervous system, so they pretty much do all the work. And that's kind of important because it's going to allow for movement. It's going to provide protection for your internal organs, and it also assists with the other organs. Think about your diaphragm for contracting for breathing, your jaw muscles to allow for breathing, or sorry, not breathing, for chewing and digestion, and for me just to be able to talk and actually go through those. Now, we have the skeletal system shown right here, and the main function of the skeletal system is to support your body. We have to protect the internal organs, so that's why you have that rib cage. Think about all the important stuff right here, your heart and your lungs that are especially located in this area. It's going to aid in movement. It's where we're going to store some minerals, and actually you produce blood cells here in your bone marrow. So that's really important because you're going to appreciate them especially a lot more when we talk about your immune system and where all these cells are produced. The human skeleton, actually quite complex, is composed of 206 bones. The smallest is your inner ear, and your largest happens to be your femur. Now, we do break it up into two big units. We call it the axial skeleton, which forms the central axis, shown in blue right here. So you're going to have your skull bones, the bones of the inner ear, which we call your ossicles. You're going to have the hyoid bone, over right here, and then your vertebral column and your thoracic cage. And then rest is called appendicular, so your appendages. So these are going to be your limbs. Your pectoral girdle falls on right here, and then your pelvic girdle, sorry, I'm backwards, and your hip bones and all the other stuff. Now, where the bones come together, those are your joints. So if you ever have things popping, it's probably what's going on with your joints. Don't worry. So here's just a little bit more detail about the axial and the appendicular skeleton. So the axial, as I mentioned, is your central axis. So what the skull is going to do is provide structure for your face, and it's going to provide support. It's going to protect the brain. The brain is super important. I think that's the next lecture after this one. Now, it is composed of cranial and facial bones. And you're going to have those auditory ossicles inside your middle ear. And what they do is help with transmittal of sound. And I have a lecture about the senses, so you can actually understand that a little bit more. These are going to be vibrations in the air, and it's going to be directed to the fluid-filled cochlea. I was a kid that had hearing problems. I had to have tubes in my ears and all the other stuff, and I appreciate the hearing process so much. Now, the hyoid bone is below the mandible in the front of the neck, and it serves as a movable base for the tongue. Now, next up, you have that vertebral column, which surrounds and protects your spinal cord. It's going to support your head and provides an attachment point. It's composed of 24 vertebrae, your sacrum, and your coccyx. So remember, at one point in time, I talked about what it considers to be a vertebrate. Remember, postanal tail was it? So your tail was part of that one time. And then we have your thoracic, which is going to protect your thoracic cage right there, protect your heart and lungs. Provides a lot of support in the body, and it serves as an attachment point. So you're going to have your ribs, your sternum, your thoracic vertebrae, and costal cartilages that all make up that part. Now, your appendicular section, shown in pink right here, or red to be more particular, going with the diagram, is all your limb bones. You're also going to have your pectoral girdle and your pelvic girdle. So your pectoral is going to be your collarbone and your shoulder blades, and your pelvic is going to support your lower limbs, and that's going to be for your two large hip bones, and you're going to need some super strong ligaments down here at the bottom. So how does this all help with movements? So you've heard these terms before, joints, tendons, and ligaments. So what are the differences? Well, first off, joints are where two bones meet. I'm double jointed in my fingers, and I know it's probably bad for me, but I can actually go through and I can actually hear them click a little bit when I go through and do that. I actually asked my 1409 class last semester, and I was the only one in the class of 24 that could do that. I don't know. It's just one of those unique things with me. And you've heard people that are double jointed. It's quite cool. That's where they're able to do excess movement in those areas. Now, joints do help with movement and stability. And depending on their structure or function, will be a type of joint that they're kind of identified as. Now, a tendon is going to serve to move the muscle, move the bone, or serves to move the bone or structure. A ligament is going to be a fibrous connective tissue attaches bone to bone and usually serves to hold structures together to keep them stable. So there's all kinds of different ones. There's muscles and tendons. Now when it comes to different things, so bone to bone, tendons, ligaments going to be muscle to bone. Sorry, I might have that wrong. Sorry, ligaments is bone to bone. Tendon is the bone to a structure. Sorry, but it's late in the evening. I'm getting tired. Now, there are different types of joints that you'll see later on. There's going to be the fibrous joints, which are held together by connective tissue. Example will be the joints that you'll see in the skull. There's the cartilaginous joints, bones connected by the cartilage, shown in figure B right here. They provide little movement. It's going to be especially in your backbone. And then there's going to be the synovial joints, which is shown in figure C right here. It floats like a fluid-filled space between bones, and this is going to be like your knees, your elbows, and your shoulders. There's going to be fluid here and allows for a lot more movement. Yes, ligaments, bone to another bone, tendons, muscles to bone. If I had that wrong earlier, I'm so sorry. It's been a long week, and I've been recording unit 2 and 3 all in the same day. So this gets to different joint disorders that you can have. If you've ever dislocated a joint, you know it's super painful. It's forced out of its usual alignment, and it can weaken those ligaments around them. You can locate it back in. I've dislocated both of my shoulders before at the same time. It's a long story when I was a kid, and it was very painful. Or you could be double jointed, as I mentioned. I'm like this hand right here, not the hairy arm, that's a man hand, but I can do this with my fingers. It's quite interesting. Now, that's also known as hypermobility. So that's your ability to be double jointed. There's all kinds of different people. They're double jointed in their shoulders, knees, all kinds of stuff. And it's probably more of the population than you think. You can have where you sprain. So this is when the ligaments or tendons are overstretched. I've sprained my ankles multiple times because I forget to how to walk downstairs. You can actually tear them. So you're seeing a lot of this. If you're an NFL fan, you just saw, was it Joe Burrow? His poor knee was just ripped apart. All those ligaments and joints and everything in the knee pretty much was just destroyed and having to be repaired. So you can actually have it to where you have a torn meniscus, where you have damage to the cartilage caps, those protection parts of the joint, so you have to repair that. And then you have osteoarthritis, which is where you have that wear and tear of between the joints kind of goes, or it might heal irregularly. It can be quite painful. So let's talk about a little bit about bone. Now, it is the living tissue composed of cells that use calcium, and there's different types of bones. There's compact bone shown right here. These are microscopic images. It's going to be very tightly packed, and it forms the hard outer shell of your bones that you're used to seeing. Now, you do have spongy bone. If you kind of looked at it, looks kind of like a loofah or sea sponge. It's going to be very loosely packed, very porous, honeycomb-like, and this is going to be the inner part of your bone. Now, in the super middle part, you're going to have the bone marrow. This is the interior, and this is where it's going to produce the blood cells. So super important. This isn't human. I think this is pig or something like that, but it's showing like this bone marrow is that inner part. People love to cook that. Here's a description talking about the different types of bones, and with that, you're going to have blood vessels throughout inside your bone marrow too. Now, one problem that can happen with bones is osteoporosis. I might have said that wrong in the previous slide. But this is where your bones get weak, where the reabsorption outpaces the bone deposition. So, and what I found this interesting, 20% of men will actually get it. That's why they tell you to drink your milk, but actually we're not supposed to be able to drink milk. I talked about how lactose ability to actually break it down is actually a mutation. But the rate's several times higher in females. So that's why you tend to see those little old ladies breaking their bones, breaking their hips all the time. Now, how can you prevent this? Exercise, eat a healthy diet. So they tell you increase the calcium, vitamin D. So I'm going to eat all the cheese I can. Limit alcohol intake. We'll try there. And not smoking. So your muscular system, we kind of talked about the skeletal, and I'm just going to briefly hit on it. But I'm not going to make you memorize all the muscles. I'm not mean like that. But I just want you to know what they do. And they help aid with movement along with the bones. They can also aid in respiration and digestion. And they are regulated by the nervous system, the big boss right there. Now, there are different types of muscle tissue. There are 3 types. And these images kind of show you how they look a little bit different. So first off, you have your skeletal muscle. It's going to be very striated. It's going to attach to bones and sometimes skin. Very important in controlling locomotion, and it is intentionally controlled. You can control this. It has a very striped appearance. You'll see these long nuclei also associated with that. Now, your smooth muscle is this middle image right here. It forms like the walls of a lot of your hollow organs. Think about your intestines, your stomach, your bladder, respiratory tract, especially your blood vessels. There's not going to be these striations that you're kind of used to seeing right here. Now, this is involuntary control, so you really have no control over this, which is okay. Well, you really wish that you can quiet that stomach sometimes, but you try to think, shut up, but it doesn't work. Now, last one is cardiac muscle, only found in the heart. You cannot control this as an involuntary movement, but very striated appearance. It helps maintain blood pressure, and it also serves as what pumps your blood. So I do know that they go over a little bit about muscle contractions, and there is a video right here that actually talks about the actin, myosin, sliding past the filaments. I'm not going to go into extreme detail about this, but I just want to introduce the parts of a muscle fiber a little bit to you. So a muscle fiber is just equal to a muscle cell. So if you're about to take a cross-section of these different fibers, you're going to see different parts. You're going to see the sarcolemma, which is the plasma membrane of a muscle cell. Sarcoplasm is the cytoplasm within, a little space area here. The myofibril is the grouping of myofibrin filaments. And then the myofilaments, which is the actin, is the thin, and the myosin is the thick. Now, these filaments are, the actin and myosin shown in different colors, are actually overlapping. And it's this overlapping and using chemical signals and all this other stuff. It takes a lot of ATP. It's going to go through and actually do the contractions. You're going to see them slide past each other ultimately. As I mentioned, this is a video that talks about it. I didn't want to go into too much detail because I know I only have your attention for so long. Now, you're going to need a lot of ATP to make this happen so they can slide past each other and form those contractions. And when they unhook, that's what we have, the relaxation, which is the release. Now, one thing that's associated with muscles contraction is rigor mortis. So when you die, you no longer are producing ATP, and the filaments remain hooked and not contracted. So that's why you're not able to do with movement. As I mentioned, I watch all those doctors and murder shows. I'm not a serial killer in training or anything. That's what I like to watch. That and baking shows, Cosmos, Animal Planet shows. I have a wide variety. So if you have any suggestions, let me know. But I am a huge Law and Order fan. And you always see them talk about, well, when did rigor mortis set in, so they can actually link that to time of death. All right, so here are some review videos about the musculoskeletal system. And then, of course, credit for my images.